I'm just making sure I
All
do all
right.
the.
Good evening and welcome to the Brain Trust. Tonight we're exploring the question of what happiness is. So, anyway, over the past few weeks, we've been discussing ideas. What is justice? What is freedom? Tonight we're looking at what is happiness? How do we cultivate it? Where does it come from? What's the difference between being happy and, let's say, ecstasy or joy,
Yeah.
things like that. Joining me tonight is Cassie. A little bit later, we might be having placeholders stop in. Until then, we'll begin the subject ourselves. Welcome to the evening, Cassie. I don't even know why I'm saying that. You're always here.
I live here.
But happiness. It's my contention that happiness comes from gratitude. I believe that. I think somebody said that, and it was a very convincing argument. I bought it pretty easily. And I've been applying it ever since and found that it's fairly true. It's really hard to be unhappy when you're grateful for what you have. And I think that when you see what you have and you're like, oh, I'm glad I have that, as opposed to, oh, that's great, except, you're not happy at that point.
Yeah. But, I mean.
But if happiness were to come from gratitude, and that's a big if happiness does come from gratitude, how do you cultivate it? I mean, do you sit around going, oh, well, I just need to be more grateful for my stuff. Okay, I'm grateful for that. I don't feel happier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a hard topic because what type of happiness are we speaking about? Are we talking general happiness? Are we talking pleasure type happiness? Like,
oh, no, we're not. This is a family show, Cassie. Okay, so what we're talking about general happiness, emotional satisfaction, contentment, and not really contentment, beyond contentment, to actually being happy, like proactively happy. Gotta hate that phrase. I'm not grateful for that phrase. It does not make me happy.
It sounds weird.
It does. Proactive gratefulness, gratitude. No. But how do we cultivate happiness? Like, really? How do you make something like that occur? You can't sit there and lie to yourself. I don't believe in fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
I mean, that's kind of hard because, like, in the world we live in, I think part of it is probably not comparing yourself to other people. You know what I mean?
I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
Because we're humans. We compare ourselves, and that's where a lot of the jealousy comes from. And I admit it. I do it. I am telling you not to do it, but I do it all the time.
That's okay. Like, you have a lot to be jealous over. Placeholder's one heck of a film.
This is true. But we all have, like, that part of us. And I think accepting ourselves as we are could possibly, and say, understanding, hey, I have faults. I have, and accepting our shortcomings, maybe we would be a lot better.
Kind of like what we were talking about. I don't know if it was last week or the week before when we were talking about not being overwhelmed by our failures, not being afraid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely a good point. I think part of happiness is learning to ignore the things that make you unhappy. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. It's probably the hardest part about being happy is being able to see something without focusing on the faults, without focusing on the bad things about it.
Yeah. I mean, Like, you look at people and you think, hey, I don't feel good enough because this person has this. We are constantly doing that all the time, especially since social media. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It has made it a lot harder for people who have issues with, let's say, people like me who suffer from a disorder that is called body dysmorphia or body dysmorphic disorder. And that's where you see flaws in your body that most people do not see. And since the rise of social media, you people like me have more to compare themselves to, which makes us sicker. If that makes any sense?
No, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were afraid of being, let's say that you had claustrophobia, you're afraid of being in tight spaces, and I locked you in a closet every day. There's some people that say, facing your fears helps you overcome them. But if I like vindictively, cruelly locked you in a closet every day, that's not going to help. That's going to exacerbate things.
Yes.
So if you're looking around the world, comparing all these women to yourself and going, well, my hips aren't like hers, and my lips aren't like hers, and my eyes aren't like hers, and she's so much prettier than me. Yeah, I could see that amplifying the problem.
Yeah, and so you have to learn how to be happy with yourself. And that's something I am struggling with every day, because the other thing that we're noticing is with the rise of social media is a rise in eating disorders. You know? In women. Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with not getting a lot of sunlight, sitting in front of a computer. I'm totally making this up as I go. No, seriously though. There's a study that was done, and it was I want to say it was about 15 or 16 years ago, and it was done out of Emory. And I happen to know the guy that did it. And that's how I know it exists. It's a graduate degree final, what do you call it? Dissertation.
Okay.
And it tracked countries all over the world geographically and determined how much sunlight they got. And then it looked at the rates of anorexia, bulimia, and depression in those countries based on average annual sunlight. And then it looked at cities individually, like Seattle and so forth, that get very little sunlight versus, say, Phoenix, which gets a lot of sunlight. And it looked at eating disorders and depression there. And then it looked at individuals with eating disorders and depression and determined, daily routines and activities to determine how much sunlight they got. And the conclusion of the paper, of the dissertation, was that people who get less sunlight are more likely to have eating disorders, and that by putting people in full spectrum lighting, you can actually do amazing therapy to help cure things like anorexia and bulimia and depression.
That is interesting, because as someone who suffers from bulimia and anorexia, I don't look like it. People look at me. Oh no, you're plus size. You don't look like it.
Definitely look at you and tell that you don't get enough sunlight.
Oh yeah.
You glow in the dark. You're the only Latina I know that glows in the dark.
I'm pale.
Yeah. What a couple of weirdos the Brain Trust is. We get an Irish guy that everyone walks up and speaks Spanish to because he's so dark you think he's a Latino. And a Latina that glows in the dark.
That's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more because my mom has a lot of Irish and English heritage, and I think that's what came out.
Yeah, the Irish isn't really helping me look white. The Spanish kind of overwhelmed it.
And then we have Placeholder, who's darker than I am.
Oh yeah, he's like in between us. He's a bit in between, but he looks like a normal, like Germanic English white guy.
Yeah, and it's just like
he's definitely a Dane. I'll give him that. He's a Dane with dark hair.
Yeah, and it's funny. And you see what color hair? I was born with blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Your phenotype is not a Latina.
I am what is very commonly considered beautiful in Mexico.
Yeah. What do you call it? Mexican by genetics only.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
But I mean, yeah, even growing up, like being a Latina that is lighter skinned, you compare yourself to darker skinned, girls.
yeah. And I've noticed that. See, I grew up in the barrio. Most of my friends were
Yep.
black because they were the ones that spoke English.
Yeah.
And so I noticed that growing up in a primarily black and Hispanic school that
Mm-hmm.
um, it's no different amongst black people. They, as at least as kids back in the
Mm-hmm.
80s, there were the ones that were darker skinned, there were ones that were lighter skinned, and it seemed like if you were darker skinned, then you were at the bottom of the sheet heap.
Well, and the thing is, like when you are darker skin, let's say Latina, you can get away with having a little bit more tummy than you can if you're a skinny, a lighter skin Latina. You'll get picked on more, and that's
Is it
kind of
kind
fun.
of like the what is it, the societal expectations for like the brunette librarian versus the blonde bimbo?
Yeah, basically, I was
Okay,
expected to be the blonde bimbo.
okay, I got you.
It kind of still hasn't, but yeah, and the thing is, like, we don't realize how much society even accounts for part of our happiness. You know what I mean? How much society, the pressure of society or our society puts actually affects our happiness.
I think part of the key to being happy is
Uh-huh.
ignoring society. And I think you legitimately, and this is advice I would give to anybody, is think about the 8 to 10 to maybe 20 people that you really, really intimately love, that those people are a part of your life every day, and so forth and so on, and care about those people and care about their problems. And everybody else in the world, forget them. Because in all reality, there's almost nothing you can do to save their lives, to make their lives better, every now and then you might want to run across one that enters into your small group of people that you legitimately care about.
Yeah.
But if you try to stretch yourself so thin, like you see young advocates, young people, millennials, and
Yeah.
and they want to do good. They want to do something good. They want to make the world a better place, and they pick some cause.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just obsess over it, and you can see it takes a physical toll on them. You can see that they legitimately care about the poor, starving kids in Somalia. But I cannot stress to you enough, you're never going to fix it. You can't,
Yeah.
and it's killing you. So stop. You will never be happy as long as you're worrying about things that you cannot fix.
Hmm.
Well,
So
when we're talking about like things that you can and cannot fix, we need to talk about your expectations for happiness, really, before we talk about what happiness itself is.
that's a really good point. And welcome to the show, Placeholder.
Sorry, guys. I was helping a friend of mine learn how to play Magic before I leave, and he built a red black goblin deck that was a little bit meaty, so I helped him trim it out a little bit. We ran a little late, so sorry about that.
That gives. I'd like to make a little side note here. And this is channel announcements, but just for the record, on the 15th of May, we will not be having a show. And up until about the 22nd of May, Placeholder will not be joining us. And most of that has to do with him preparing to move across the country. It's a pretty big transition. But after he moves across the country,
Yes.
things are gonna get interesting.
Yes, because we can actually have proper discussions instead of me being late every time.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you'll have somebody there going, babe.
Yeah, so you're reminding me that I have things that I have to do.
Good times, great oldies, Fox 97.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, so when we're talking about happiness, we need to first establish, like, how do we determine if someone's happy? So is it just, I don't know if you guys have already gone over this or not. So there's the initial thought of, well, I mean, if you think you're happy, you're happy. You can't really objectively measure whether or not a person is happy or how happy they are. So if they think they're happy, well, it's their brain. Their brain is releasing serotonin and endorphins. Therefore, the brain must be happy, regardless of the conditions. Now, environmental conditions do contribute to your happiness. Say you want to be, you would like to feel happier, and the environment is inhospitable. So what is the main thing that you would do? Well, you would seek comfort. You would search for better environments. And that's kind of what early human did when they took the step out of Africa.
Yeah, there were a lot of
always
things
like it is today, by the way, kids.
Yeah, there were a lot of things trying to eat them at the time.
Yeah. But
it was not a happy period.
There's the other side of this, which is happiness is the avoidance of pain and the seeking of comfort.
No, I'd have to disagree with that definition.
Well, yeah, because
I don't think that all people find happiness in avoiding pain. I think that there are some out there.
It's not that happiness, not that people are happy when they're avoiding pain. It's people seek happiness by avoiding pain. So if you avoid things that are harmful to you, you have a much higher chance of being happy.
Not to be pedantic, just to be more specific. Instead of the word pain, how about we use the word suffering?
Yeah, because those of us like
I'm just saying there are people out there that enjoy pain.
I get that we're talking in general terms.
Yeah.
That's why I think suffering is a better term. I think that's what you mean when you say pain. I totally believe that that's what you're intending to mean. Like the idea you're getting across is to avoid to suffer. Is one of the ways that we try to cultivate happiness.
Sure, but it's more,
or I should say prevent sadness, maybe.
Well, no, because sadness is a type of pain. Sadness is a type of pain, just as social isolation is a type of pain, as was recently discovered, and I can dig out that paper as well.
Yeah.
I just advocated social isolation as a way to be happy.
There's a difference.
No, I didn't. I didn't actually say social isolation. I basically said take your core group, care about your core group, and don't stress about the rest of the world because you can't save it.
Okay, that's not quite the same. So
yeah, that's not social isolation. But it did sound like a funny moment, you know.
Sure.
It's like I just said the exact opposite, buddy. Thanks for that one. Backing me up and everything.
Yeah, don't be me. Don't just just don't hide from the world.
Yeah. So what I mean by that, it's not just isolating yourself. Mm-hmm. Social ostracization, if I can say the word, also contributes towards this. Loneliness causes emotional pain, which causes a physiological response, which decreases happiness. Lack of material resources and scarcity of friends, that does that as well. So happiness is kind of a hard term for us to define just in however long we're going to be here for this evening. My assumption is probably like an hour, right?
Yeah. So what you're saying is a lot of it has to do with the perspective of the person that's experiencing the quote unquote happiness.
Yes, happiness is purely subjective.
I'll agree with that.
We can measure it. Don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because subjectivity kind of takes away from concrete existence. I don't mean that in such that happiness exists only in our heads, as I mean it exists in our brain.
Would there be a way to, do you think, program happiness as a concept into a computer system or a robot?
With a sufficiently complex set of circumstances? Absolutely.
So you think it could be actually broken down to like a binary coded...
Do I think we could do it in binary? No, it would have to
be... I mean, like,
you
know, like what I'm saying is like it could be broken down to a coded function.
I think it already, well, it kind of has been. We can generate happiness with pills.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
I mean, that's where the
cracked
term
that
happy
already.
pill comes from.
Things
And
like
those,
antidepressants, like SSRIs, for example, may help alleviate depression, and that's part of regulating the chemical balance of the brain. Because if you have a chemical imbalance, it generally tends towards not being happy, but that's because of physiological reasons, which is why I think happiness is purely physiological in its physical nature, but subjective in its conceptual nature.
here's an interesting paradoxical question. Do you think that there are people out there who actually suffer when they're happy, who try to be unhappy, who purposefully go for those goals?
Yes.
It'd be
Yes.
interesting.
I do.
I know it sounds paradoxical because what I'm asking is, are there people that are happy to be unhappy?
Yes.
People who enjoy being unhappy,
They
Yeah,
go,
who enjoy, well, I guess being unhappy,
happy and miserable that they're happy.
yeah, they seem content to misery. How about that?
Okay, are they happy being unhappy? Like, okay, are we talking like a rage addict, or are we talking
Well,
like
here, I'll give
Jim
you an
Carrey?
example. I'll give you an example. Say, somebody, a person in this situation might say something like, "Hey, can you do this for me, and it'll make me happy?" And you go, "Okay," and you go and you do it for them, and they go, "Yeah, you did it, but you know, you didn't do it fast enough, or you did it this way, or you did." Like every time something is supposed to make them happy, they look for the thing that makes it not worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, people are like that. They're generally called dicks.
Yeah. I think that
mostly
the
it's
people that are determined to be unhappy, and it goes back to my original point that the ungrateful are incapable of happiness. You have to be grateful in order to be happy.
I wouldn't
Well, I mean, I
necessarily
wouldn't say
disagree
you
with
have
that.
to be grateful, but if you are grateful, it's hard not to be happy when you're genuinely grateful. So if you
I
have the
don't
level
necessarily.
of ingratitude where somebody does something for you, and you specifically look for the flaws in their action,
Right. No,
then
I don't necessarily disagree with that as a concept. I think that there are people who are like that. I can think of a few that I've met in my life that are absolutely like that. My grandmother comes to mind. Love you, Grandma. Um,
mine was from Ireland too, buddy.
yeah.
um
No, she's German.
Oh,
mhm.
oh, even worse. My bad.
But no, what I'm getting at more is like, okay, we can generate happiness through the use of chemicals in the brain.
Yeah.
Therefore, happiness is not necessarily that hard for us to generate. If we can expose the brain to sufficient quantities of whatever of serotonin, um, we can elevate the mood, and that may help improve thinking because happiness is also tied to clarity of thought. If you're unhappy, and let's say the circumstances of your life are such that you are essentially living in scarcity, because scarcity and abundance also contributes towards happiness. Um, you think much slower and you have a much more difficult time, almost to the point of being a standard deviation on the IQ scale less than you actually are
Hmm.
in terms of your overall cognitive ability due to the circumstances surrounding the actual goings on for you right now.
So
That's
my IQ could be a lot higher.
It probably is just once things improve that you'll start to be able to think clearer.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust IQs anyway. They're not a very good measurement of a person's capabilities. They're a really good measurement of a person's intellect and ability to learn, but beyond that, they don't really tell you much.
IQ measures computational speed.
Yeah, basically how quickly you learn and retain information.
Right, but IQ is the number one predictor of success.
That's because we don't have a viable test for measuring work ethic.
Sure you do. It's personality.
No, that's a
So high
personality.
conscientiousness generally tends towards a better work ethic because you are more conscientious of I know I'm using the word of other people's needs in addition to your own. High agreeableness also contributes towards this. and low trait neuroticism is really those three, and that balance is ideal for most people. Openness and extroversion are the other two, and they also contribute towards your ability to interact. But really, you're going to have your conscientiousness trait in your personality is the determiner of your work ethic.
I don't know.
So the big five and IQ, that's what you are.
I tend to see IQ as a great determiner of either success or drug-fueled rage. It doesn't necessarily the people at the top of the spectrum go one of two different directions, and there's not a lot of middle ground in those two different directions. You know what I mean?
Right, but I mean, when we're measuring for success, we wouldn't be measuring for failure at the same time.
Yeah, well, they're two sides of the same coin, and the higher chances of success, the higher chances of failure. And I tend to believe that the people with the most average IQs end up leading the most peaceful, quiet, and easy existences, whereas the ones with the higher IQs tend to either end up highly successful or highly unsuccessful.
Sure, and okay, so IQ and your personality, the way they break it down, and this is all in well-established psychological research, by the way. The research is all out there, and I'm more than happy to provide that as well for sources later.
Yeah, if we need to, we'll throw some links in the description. I'm not gonna source you here on this conversation, but if we need to, we'll go ahead and put some stuff in the description.
But so when you're talking about success and what contributes towards it, and success contributes towards happiness, by the way. People who are more successful on aggregate are the people with the higher IQs, because they're the people who are able to process information faster, because jobs are becoming far and far more complex and cognitively demanding. So you need to be able to keep up with machinery in that way. That's why more and more of the economy is being automated away for simple tasks. And that's why for people who are on the lower end of the IQ spectrum, there really isn't much work. And that also kind of tends towards them not being as happy or productive as everybody else in society, not necessarily by their own fault. And this is, we're getting into political season now, so that's kind of what I'm paying attention to. Certain candidates and certain policies being advocated, like the freedom dividend, such a good idea is because if we can create a floor for everybody where their basic needs are met, people will be much happier and much more productive, because happiness is tied to productivity and economic growth.
I don't know. I tend to think that, especially when it comes to needs, that your modern human has a very, very difficult time understanding the difference between a need and a want.
Food, shelter, clothes.
Yeah. You don't need Wi-Fi. You don't need a cell phone.
Yes, you do. And I can tell you why.
I don't need a Wi-Fi. I don't need a cell phone. I probably should not have either.
No, in order to get gainful employment, you must be able to be reached. Yeah. Having an active phone line, preferably a cell phone, depending on the jobs. Some jobs require cell phones. You have to have some method of communication.
No, I would agree with that to some degree. But
it doesn't need to be a smartphone. It can be a flip phone for all I care. No. Get a Motorola Razr and call it good.
Communication and thumbs is what puts us above the other animals. So I'm not going to disagree with you, but I will disagree that you need a cell phone. And here's why. I'm a pretty successful guy in my field of study in engineering. And if you ask my wife what her biggest complaint about me in the world is right now, and always has been, it's that I never, ever, ever answer my cell phone. I just don't.
Yes, I already heard that.
I will leave my phone next to my bed for 3 weeks straight and not even realize it's been dead for 2.5 weeks. I literally will not. I don't care about my phone. I hate it. To me, it's an electronic leash, and I feel like it's a giant ball attached to a chain strapped around my leg. I don't want my phone. I don't like my phone. I'm perfectly successful without it.
Okay. So this is where I come in and say, I understand that you have success without it, but You are not
Well,
everyone.
but what I'm going back to, and what led us down this path is the difference between a need and a want. Yes, it would be a lot easier for me to reach into my pocket, pull out a device, push a few buttons, and talk to my boss. But I can just easily, say go to the house and pick up the house phone, or go to a public payphone when they still existed, and so forth and so on. There are other options, I guess is my point. You don't need internet. There are public libraries. They all have the internet, and they all have plenty of computers now. In fact, they have more computers than books at our public library.
Right. I wasn't saying that Wi-Fi was a requirement.
Yeah.
I'm saying a cell phone is a requirement.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research to suggest that increasingly so it's going to be a base necessity due to the increase in cognitive demand for everything, and the greater amount of work that is going to be expected to be done on the personal side.
Cassie,
Rather,
you're feeding back.
sorry, I muted her.
You give her a quick check there. She was having some problems with feedback early before we went on. So
Anyway, but that's a tangent. That's a discussion that we can have another time. As it relates to happiness, it's not just being able to communicate with your job. Don't get me wrong, having money, okay, money has a price tag, or happiness has a price tag. It's $30,000 a year. $30,000 covers all of your basic needs for housing, covers your basic needs for food, for entertainment, for savings, which is security, and
keep in mind,
for everything for the upkeep of your domicile.
You're speaking about your cost of living right now. That one's a relative term. But no, I get what you're saying. Cost of living is definitely
The $30,000 a year is an on average figure. It's not like a concrete for everybody. It's on average 30,000 a year.
And it's going to go a lot further in Montana than it will in LA.
That's true. Like if we're
You'd be a lot happier on 30 grand in Montana than you will in LA. Plus, there's more crack in LA. No, wait, it's hard to guess.
In Montana?
Yeah, which one has more crack?
Probably Montana.
But you're talking about LA, dude.
I mean, yeah, LA. Don't get me wrong.
Hollywood over there. All of them guys are on crack. But it is Montana. That's what I'm saying. It's up in the air, man. It could be either way. Maybe happiness is a warm gun.
So 30,000 a year is on average, and it's mainly for the base necessities and a small amount of security. Because if you have something in savings, you can act a little bit more confidently, so you have a pillow to fall back on. Versus if you have nothing in savings, you have nowhere to fall. So you fall right through the floor, right into poverty.
Yeah, you're basically bouncing off the walls as you walk down the hall.
Yeah.
Just trying to stay stable. And that's literally that causes chain reactions, by the way. And it can last for years, those chain reactions. So yeah, I can definitely see scarcity being an impact, and not to mention stress.
Huh. Scarcity is the number one cause of stress.
I've been trying to. It doesn't seem to work. But the thing with stress, though, is that stress piles up. It has a snowball effect, and after a while, it starts just self-perpetuating. The stress itself becomes stressful.
Yeah, and that's also, it acts in the same part of the brain, that social pain, which is what I was talking about earlier with loneliness. It causes a type of pain called social pain, and stress. That kind of stress, the self-sustaining reactive stress, that activates in the same part of the brain. And it's fascinating how this new aspect of our brain that has been discovered, and I'm really interested in how the research is going to develop on it, because man, we can get some amazing treatments for that. Yeah. But if we can figure out how to, what's the word I'm thinking of, compensate There we go. For that aspect of our physiology, we can then create people who are more content. So we might, with this discovery, create a drug like Soma from Brave New World, or a far more effective class of antidepressants.
Huh. If we could break it down to a computational function, then, we could basically just program people to be happy.
Sure. Regardless of their material status, depending on the impact of this discovery and how thorough we're able to map the brain at that point, because that's a brand new function that's been discovered. It was discovered, I think, there was a paper published on it in 2017. So it's a relatively new discovery. It's still buzzing. Why is it doing that?
I don't know.
I think she's really close to some sort of electrical discharge or magnetic field right now. And it's just feeding back into the speaker. Or into
But it's your headphones.
Well, she's on the phone.
Yeah.
And so you've got cellular interference by basically any strong electromagnetic field or anything like that can interfere with the phone. If she's on the computer, it'd be a totally different situation.
Could also be a loose wire.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I lost my charger for my laptop again.
Nice.
So this is what you guys have to deal with at least till next week.
Oh, you know what? We're going to get you a solar-powered laptop, and we're going to start hosting during the day, get you out in the sun, turn you bright red.
Yeah, that would happen.
Yeah.
Placeholder's already seen it. I'm not kidding you. SPF 100, all over body.
Hey, look, she walked to her car, and now she's a strawberry.
What happened, babe? Remember what happened? I started to burn.
She was turning red before my very eyes.
Like, whoa, I can see it shading. Oh, get out of the sun! Get out of the sun!
When I say
last time I saw something do that, I was in a blacksmith shop.
I am.
Started glowing, man.
When we say I'm glow in the dark, we mean I'm glow in the dark.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. Like, I saw this picture of these two girls sitting on the beach, and when you first see the picture, it looks like one girl sitting on the beach next to a very large pile of really bright white sand, and then you realize the sand is wearing a bikini, and that's Cassie. Just blends right into the white sand in the background.
Yeah, pretty much. It's awesome because you can blend into the white, walls, and people don't notice you.
So if we can kind of
back around to happiness.
Yeah.
Sorry. Dude, we were being happy.
By the way.
I don't know. I think that enjoying the humor in your sadness is that's happiness.
Well, tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Okay.
If you can't laugh at yourself.
Well, yeah, that's why
if you can't laugh at yourself,
find things like Holocaust jokes funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can't laugh at yourself, you can always laugh at me.
Or Placeholder's face when we're walking down a street that is perfectly flat and I fall flat on my face.
Yeah. Those are always fun to...
That one's hilarious.
No, you did that like twice when we were hanging out with all three of us too. We're all walking and we're talking, and then she's just gone for a second. It's like, she's stumbling. She's getting back. She's getting back up. Don't worry, she's fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good.
You're like Maggie from The Simpsons. Just like bonk, bonk. But yeah, that makes me happy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think in order to be happy, you have to want to, like, and it's not something that you just accidentally stumble into. I mean, occasionally, maybe amazing things can happen in your life that really just open your world up and suddenly you're happy and you have no idea why.
Sure.
Or you do
But
know
we're
why, but
still operating under some sort of an understanding of what happiness is without having to find it.
well, I think that if you want to be happy, you can find a way. And I think that you just have to start with looking at the world around you and saying what you like about it, instead of, as like Cassie alluded to earlier, looking at the people around you and saying why you're not like them, or looking at the world around you and say, why what you don't like about it. Stop focusing on the negative, and I think you can find more happiness.
And girls
So
with
is
dating.
happiness simply unbridled positivity?
No.
No.
I think it's being able to accept the world as it is and being okay with it, and like looking for the things that make you happy to kind of counterbalance the things that make you sad, because it's almost impossible not to notice the things that upset you, especially when they appear in front of you.
Oh yeah, like me sitting on Instagram.
And
I'm not
so
that...
it's like you said earlier with the social media. The social media
Yeah.
is killing our happiness, because you're sitting there looking at beautiful women all day going, why am I not like this?
Yeah, and that's exactly, and it sends you back down into a spiral.
Yeah, and it's not. It doesn't make it. So I think part of happiness is just being able. It's not unbridled positivity necessarily, but there's a lot of positivity in it. You have to be willing to look past the things that make you unhappy in order to be happy. But yeah, I think it also is can be achieved by large quantities of chocolate or dopamine.
Yeah.
Endorphins, those kinds of things. It's an interesting concept, because it can be at least I think we've all agreed, it can be achieved chemically, it can be achieved computationally, and it can be achieved naturally. So it's an interesting concept. There's not a lot of human qualities or emotions that follow those lines.
Well, no, every emotion that a human feels is chemically induced.
Well, yeah, I know, but the topics we've discussed earlier, things like justice and freedom, you can't equate those not mathematically, like computationally. You can't equate them chemically. You can't say, can we create this by mashing this stuff together? You can with happiness.
Well, no, you can engineer freedom socially. Freedom can be measured, and we have the Freedom Measurement Index, part of the World Health Organization and the UN.
Yeah, but part of the discussion we had last week is how even when you're free, you're not truly free, and when you're not truly free, you're sometimes more free. And the concepts surrounding those ideas, it's like,
well, if we're in considering things like absolute freedom, sure, there's no such thing as absolute freedom, and I would argue that because of this, there's no such thing as free will, which I think we should have a discussion on later. But
yeah, but this was
when we're
last
talking
week
about happiness, though, like, I guess what I'm kind of trying to get you guys to understand is we're talking about happiness as an understood and defined concept, instead, without having actually introduced to the discussion an actual definition of happiness. Happiness can be attained by, well, what is happiness? Like, how do we know when we're happy? It's not just, I would argue it's more than just the chemicals in the brain. I would argue that there has to be some cognitive function behind it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. We feel happiness when we do things that are good for us generally. Most people feel happiness when they eat good food, or after they're done exercising, when their body is starting to heal. People have happiness by being around people that they like being around, or if their life is such that it allows for all of their base material needs to be met, so they can then put their focus on other things. But happiness itself as the concept is more than what we have discussed as such. Like, we haven't introduced a formal definition. So
no, that's kind of the point of all of these discussions, is coming up with our brain trust definition, as we discussed all the aspects of the idea. It's not, I mean, if all the purpose was to define the word, I could pull the dictionary.
Well, it's okay. So, in having a discussion about what happiness could be or what happiness is, we have to come from a common understanding of the word.
Yeah.
So, very much in the Greek tradition, I am a worshiper of the written word. We need to have an agreed upon definition before we can have any sort of a meaningful conversation. And this was kind of my frustration with the justice discussion as well.
Well, I think there were a lot of aspects and a lot of approaches to take it for. You could take it from a prosperity of human. What is it? A human prosperity concept versus like a individual emotional concept. You could look at it. Somebody in our chat actually mentioned, how about trying to make things better instead of simply accepting them as they are, and that touches on another point that I was going to make, and that is a lot of times you can't have happiness unless you have purpose. A person, at least in my experience, a person with no purpose, with no reason to be, is not going to find happiness. Not only are they not going to find happiness, they're probably going to be depressed. If you have nothing to do, if you have no purpose, then I think, you spend most of your time sitting around thinking, well, what's the point? So yeah, you should always be trying to make things better. But you have to accept what you can't. There's like I was saying earlier, you got a millennial stressing himself out about poor kids starving in Somalia while, he's writing a term paper in the middle of the night, not getting any sleep, he's killing himself. He's not going to save these kids in Somalia, but he's probably going to obsess over it over the next 5 years or so, and maybe waste a lot of his potential and time on something he can't fix. That's not going to make him happy in the end. It's just going to make him miserable. In the end, he's going to give up on just, the whole Somalian genocide issue anyway, because it's somebody else's problem.
Okay, but just because it's someone else's problem doesn't mean you should not speak up.
Oh, no, speak up. But at the end of the day, if you can't fix it, there's got to be a point where you hang up your hat and say, well, this has to be somebody else's problem because I obviously can't fix it. There's nothing I can do. It's above my pay grade, out of my league, however you want to put it. But yeah, I mean, that's at a certain point, if you stop caring about the things that you can't fix and just accept them as this is just something I'm going to have to accept, because unless I'm willing to throw away everything I have here and go solve this problem because it's eating in my soul that much, then, if that's what's going to make you happy, then by all means, somebody needs to fix those problems. The Somalians sure as hell aren't doing it. But then again, that's just kind of my go-to world crisis. Anyway, that brings us up to about an hour. Just a quick friendly reminder, we will not be here on the 15th of May, and we are always happy to have Placeholder, but we're going to be missing them until the 22nd. So we're going to miss you, buddy. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Yeah, sorry I was late. I meant to be back like 20 minutes earlier, so I would be there on time. And I was about 10, 20 minutes late.
Yeah.
Did your buddy beat you at Magic?
No. I annihilated him. But it's because he doesn't have enough lands.
Yeah. At some point, I would love to have a live stream where we play one-on-one Magic against each other.
Sure.
But it would be very, we're gonna have to sit down and figure out how to do that without being able to see each other's hands and still show the audience.
Hi, do you realize there's a third party here?
Well, I mean, what we can do is we can get a camera set up or find a stand and set up one of our phones and broadcast it that way.
Huh?
Well,
I can use OBS.
Yeah, I have multiple cameras, one on my hand, one on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And you only get to see the table. It'll be great. Anyway, we're here every Wednesday night, usually from 10 p.m. till 11. Some nights from 11 till 12, depending on who can make it and when. We have an open door for anybody with a microphone and good ideas. We're always willing to hear your ideas, so join our discussion if you'd like. And we are a brainstorming stream, the Brain Trust. Thank you for joining. And I'm going to let Placeholder take us out so that he can do it on his last day before he leaves for a while.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. We are here every Wednesday. I think Dolphin already did all this, but I will be leaving for a little while. I'll be back in a little over a month because I'm getting ready to move. So this will be my last night for a while. It's always fun being here, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the chat. Giovanna, Liviana, I can't read. Thank you for joining us and for contributing to the discussion. Your suggestions are noted.
Man, that one's as bad as ostracization.
Yeah, dude, I don't know what's going on with my friggin' speech tonight, but all right, I will see you guys in the future.
Peace.